All right, we have reached the we're bored part of mock draft season where if like we have everybody's doing trades or all right, here's a mock draft, but we're only drafting players whose name starts with a vowel.
Next week, I'm doing my worst mock draft ever. The second annual worst mock draft ever, where the goal is to make every single fan base in the NFL mad. Like I'll probably have the Panthers trade a future first round pick to move up and draft Bo Nix or something.
Exactly. Trade back into the first round to get Bo Nix. All right. Well, speaking of Panthers trades, there seems to be a growing popularity of mocking trades with the Panthers for the first pick in the second round because teams who didn't draft a quarterback in the first but might want one in the second look at the Panthers as, hey, they've got the first pick in the second round. Let's trade up there and get our quarterback. It is possible, for instance, I'll just convolute the conversation even further, that if you're Washington, or not Washington, if you're New England, and you decide, you know what, we're not going to take quarterback number one. We're going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. With our first round pick, the third overall pick, and then we'll see which quarterback is sitting there early in the second round. So do you think the Panthers are a real candidate to trade out of the first pick on day two?
Yeah, I think so. Partially because they have, primarily because that pick, and we've seen a lot of times what ends up happening is there's so much value at the top of the second round that you go into it in the second day and knowing, all right, like we actually have somebody who is pretty high up on our board that made it to the second round. We have this opportunity to get this really good player. You saw it with the Bengals and T. Higgins a couple of years ago when the Chiefs took Clyde Edwards-Helaire and typically speaking, there's a lot more bluster about trading out. But I do think that if, you have the overnight factor, so there's a lot of time to make calls and to discuss stuff and to sort of drum up offers. And given that, we've talked about it, if David Tepper isn't the one pulling every single string on this roster right now, then I think it's entirely possible that Dan Morgan could decide to trade back, especially if, and this really depends, Adam, on how the first round shakes out. Because I think they're going to take a wide receiver with at least one of those two picks,
right?
To start the second round, maybe both of them. We'll see. But there's a ton of offensive line talent and a ton of a group of four really good cornerbacks. Obviously the quarterbacks, and then a huge group of really good wide receivers. And so if the Panthers get to the second day and we only have 3 or 4, maybe 5 wide receivers go in the first round versus 6, 7, 8. Then I think they definitely would be willing to trade back because, you want to accrue more assets. You still got 39 where you can get a wide receiver. However, if we see a big run of wide receivers in the first round, wouldn't be surprised at all if the Panthers stay there, take the best wide receiver on the board because, really, Deontay Johnson, a nice pickup as a trade for sure, but no guarantee how long, what his status is and how he'll be able to produce. That room is still very much patchwork. So I think wide receiver has to be key. I wouldn't, and again, I've said this, if David Tepper's the one pulling the strings, I wouldn't be shocked if they packaged 39 and 33 and traded up in the first round to grab a wide receiver, but I wouldn't do that if it were me.
No, the theory for me is that, and we're talking with Will Brinson, CBSSports.com, senior NFL writer. For me, they need more kicks at it on day two. Yeah. So you have 33, you have 39, you have your third round pick. So they've got 3 picks. If I was going to move out, if let's just say that somebody really wants to trade up to get Bo Nix, have at it, by the way. That would not be me. I like Michael Penix a lot, and it's interesting to see now he is kind of sliding into the middle of round 1. I love Michael Penix. But
he's older, got injuries, though. He could definitely fall. That's the best case for the Panthers, is Michael Penix falls out of the first round, doesn't get drafted on Thursday, and then there's some teams who are okay, Carolina's definitely willing to deal. We'll move down, 5 or 6 spots. We give them a third rounder just because they just need bodies, they need the picks, and you give them a third rounder, slide a couple picks up, and grab Penix there. And it's not like if you're Carolina, the opportunity cost is huge. You already have your quarterback, and nobody's going to kill you for not grabbing Penix at the top of the second round.
But I would want those picks on day 2, or at the very least, like early on day 3 in the top of near the top of the 4th round. I would not. Some of the drafts I've seen, or some of the trades I've seen, have like Carolina getting a 5th and then a 3rd next year. I'm like, nah, that would not be it. The Hurricanes, the Panthers need to draft like as many good players as they can now, and not wait until next year. So if somebody's giving me something for next year, it would have to be better. Like there would have to be a lot more value. Although the Panthers don't have great track record of making good trades on draft day. So not to publicize another website, Will, but ESPN's got an interesting kind of mock draft tool where you can actually draft for whatever team you want. So
CFF does the same thing.
Okay, cool. I like it.
By the way, I'll throw out one because I just want to make sure that I was pretty sure, but I wanted to double check. The Denver Broncos, I think, reportedly really like Michael Penix and Bo Nix. I think, and Sean Payton wants a quarterback.
Right.
Wouldn't be they don't have a second round pick. So if you're Carolina and both those guys are there or one of those guys is there at the top of the second round, I mean, I would call Denver and be like, why don't you give us your first next year for the first pick in the second round? And if they're getting a quarterback they feel like he's a franchise guy, I mean, it's always possible they swing for the fences there.
Yeah, I think that would be great, and I would love to take advantage of Sean Payton. What would be? There would be nothing terrible about fleecing Sean Payton. Will Brinson, senior NFL writer, CBSSports.com. So anyway, I did the whole mock draft thing for the Panthers, and I took Xavier Legette I didn't make any trades. I just drafted where the Panthers drafted. I took Xavier Legette from South Carolina, the wide receiver, with the first pick in the second round, and then I took that crazy good athletic defensive tackle from Florida State. Was it Braden Fiske? Who's just an absolute monster.
Way to go, Dan Morgan.
I love him. That would be pretty good if the Panthers could come out of the second round with that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about this draft too, is that there are a lot, like the talent level kind of drops off. I think after we've seen the last couple of years, it's been a very sort of even keeled draft where, and I think there's some kind of bell curve you could do. I'm not smart enough to actually do the math, but there's a COVID year bell curve in terms of the talent that's coming out of the NFL draft. And I think this is kind of the back end rolling out where you're getting a really, really big group of maybe a little bit older, but like higher in talent guys. I mean, like a Bo Nix,
right?
A Michael Penix, guys who, rejuvenated. Jaden Daniels even did it, right? Transferring from Arizona State, win the Heisman at LSU. You have a Peyton Wilson, like guys like that. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a draft where there's going to be a good run of talent, like high-end talent through the second round here. And that's where, if you're Carolina, if you screwed up, you traded away the first, the future first, the number one overall pick, the Caleb Williams pick for Bryce Young. But it's, what's done is done. That pick is, you can't get it back. And that's been the case for a long time. Once you get past this draft, you can't beat on Carolina anymore for it. It's the Bears. If you're Carolina, you come out of this after the Brian Burns trade, and you didn't get as much as you would like to get for Burns, but you got something, a good pick. If you can turn 33 and 39 into hot, like blue chips players, then I think it really could sort of like start turning the Titanic back away from the iceberg if it's not already just completely submerged.
Well, that's the problem with this team is that and for the most part, they have hit on first-round picks for the most part. They haven't all been winners, but because it's still I don't know what you call J.C. Horn at this point because he hasn't been on the field enough. But for the most part, they've been good in round one, but they haven't really been good beyond that. And especially it's
really a case for a long time with Carolina.
The Scott Fitterer era, it's really been a disaster.
That didn't go well.
I could be wrong here, but with guys in the second round, you're trying to find starters, right?
Yeah,
You're not getting depth guys.
Yeah.
You're getting starters in the second round.
Yeah, especially like in the 30s. As long as any pick inside the top 50, I mean, you're hoping, that you can come away with a starting caliber player. Now, I doubt that the Panthers have 50 first round grades. But I would guess in this class that they probably have. I mean, it's possible if you include the quarterbacks that you've got over 30 first round grades, and that's great news, which means that you have the possibility of getting a wide receiver, getting a defensive player. The offensive line class is ridiculous. One of the best we've seen in a long time. So like you have the chance to shore up the offensive line. I mean, and that's really what stings again about that first overall pick is Carolina could have traded back with so many teams. Or just drafted Caleb Williams if they didn't have Bryce Young, but they could have traded back with so many teams who would give up a haul to get Caleb Williams, and you'd be in a spot to really pick up. He could get to 11, 23 plus 2 future firsts from the Vikings for number 1 overall, whatever you want to call it, and you could anyway. That's bygones or whatever. But I think that the strengths of this class match up well with the Carolina's weaknesses. And the depth at those strengths, particularly offensive line and wide receiver, are going to be beneficial for them when they get to that second round and you think you can possibly find starters.
All right, final thing for Will Brinson, senior NFL writer, CBS Sports.com. Which team is going to make the first big mistake?
And
I'll ask you this question again next week.
I think that I think it's just by like sort of the law of averages and the math that goes into the NFL draft, it's probably either the Commanders or the Patriots, because it's hard to imagine. Let's say Caleb Williams is a star. It's hard to imagine that all 3 of Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and J.J. McCarthy are going to be stars as well. And so one of those teams is going to draft one of those guys that ends up not working out. So, I would probably lean towards, just put it on Washington because you got to you're the ones who's picking. And like, even though you have the pick, I mean, good luck telling me who's going to be better, Jaden Daniels or Drake May. I think they both have immense upside. Drafting quarterbacks is really hard. And, you'd rather have the choice and be able to make the decision actively. But sometimes there's something nice about being your third. You're like, all right, you guys do whatever you want to do, and we'll bank on you screwing up and take the other guy.
Hey, there is something to be said for taking the player that's left, right? Right? You guys make your decisions. We'll just hey, this is who was left, so we took it. That there is something to be said for that. Will Brinson, senior NFL writer, CBS Sports.com, a man who is unafraid of open water hammerhead sharks. That's the way we are going to close this. Thanks, man.
All right, buddy. See you, man.
You got it.